What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Adamas Project. My name is Brandon Burns, and I am super excited for our guest today. She's a phenomenal speaker, coach, trainer, all of the above. She's a thought leader, and she's honestly one of the most just positive people that I know. So, Whitley, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Brandon. So nice to be here.
100%. Now, I got to ask you, first question out of the gate is, like I said, you're one of the most positive people that I know. You always just seem happy. Like you're always smiling. You always have this good energy about you. Where's that come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, to be honest with you, I feel like I've been that way most of my life. I think it's just like that natural energy that I come with. It's just like that joyful energy. However, given that, I'm still a human being, I still have my tough days, my bad days, but I think that for the most part, I've always been more of the optimistic, positive person. Yeah, and I really try my best to show up with that kind of energy every day.
Yeah. Do you feel like that benefits you? Like, is that like a coat of armor that it gives you an advantage out there in the world? Or is that just more of, it's just kind of naturally how I am. I don't notice a difference.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really big on whatever it is that you give out, you bring that back to you. And so
Hmm.
I think if yeah, I think that when you go out into the world and you exude that positive energy onto others, like you really don't yeah, you don't realize how much of a difference that you can make on other people, right? And I
Hmm.
think that when you're putting out that good energy, you're bringing that good energy right back to you too. So I always keep that in mind. But I think for me as well, I think it's really important that I have an impact on other people, even in the smallest ways, even if it's just like through a
Hmm.
smile or asking somebody how their day is, or just like complimenting the cashier at the grocery store. Like those little things, I feel like go such a long way, Brandon. So,
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of a story, and I was just talking about this recently. I was speaking in Orlando this past weekend, and I was telling the audience about this story where my mom was in and out of the hospital, for the most part, my entire childhood. And when I went off to Michigan for college, there was another one of those instances. Dad calls, "Hey, mom's in the hospital. Here's all her vital signs. It doesn't look great, but it's, probably going to be okay." And for whatever reason, I was super, super nervous about it. Like it just affected me more this time around. I don't know if it was because I was all the way across the country. They were in Alabama. I was in Michigan. But I was super, super nervous about what was going on and her health and everything else. And I was walking through Meyer, which is like Michigan's version of Walmart. And I was walking through there and I made eye contact with this lady. I'd never seen her, didn't know her from Eve, but we just made eye contact and I texted my mom and I was like, "You're gonna be okay." And you can say God, you can say the universe, I don't know. But we made eye contact for half a second and I just felt this peace come over me. And a couple days later, she was discharged from the hospital. Everything was fine. And she said, that's why it's so important how you carry yourself because you never know when you're the angel that God's going to use to communicate a message like that to somebody else. And so those little things, whether you believe in that bigger picture or not, it's so true that a smile, a kind word, especially like you said, cashiers, waiters at a restaurant, these people are just freaking beaten up all day. It's like most people don't take the time to just be nice to other human beings. And
yeah.
it's the strangest thing. I don't like, what do you think about that? Is that a selfishness thing? Like we're just more concerned about how we feel than what we can do to make somebody else feel better? Is it that we don't think about it at all in the first place? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, first of all, I absolutely love that story, and I think that it holds so much truth. I think that yeah, we're constant. Like the more that we show up as our authentic selves, right? The more that we allow ourselves to be in that positive, good energy, and move through the world that way. I think that yeah, we all help others in some way, shape, or form, even in the tiniest forms. And yeah, I guess you could say, you could look at it as like, is it a selfish thing for me to want to, go out there with all that positive energy just to make myself feel good? But honestly, again, kind of like taking it back, I think that knowing that you're showing up that way, again, I believe everything is energy. And so I do my best to just making sure that I'm going out throughout my day in living my day with intention, with good intentions, and just being intentional with where I'm putting my energy, where I'm putting my focus. And yeah, and so there are going to be days too, though, when you are, on the other on the other end of that, where you're not feeling too hot, you're not feeling that great,
Mhm.
and that other person, who's showing up with that positive energy can really bring that light back to you. So yeah, it's just, I think that it's just like a normal way in how us as humans, we operate and how we can flow and really just put our light out into the world, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think whatever you're looking for, you're going to find. And
Yeah.
so you can call it reticular activating system. You can call it where your focus goes, your energy flows. I mean, there's a million ways to say it. But I think that if you are going out there and you are actively trying to put that positive energy into the world, you're probably going to receive more of it back, you know? And when I was talking about being selfish, it was almost like, are we more concerned about how we feel on a bad day? So we're not going to make that conscious, intentional choice to go out there. And even though we might not feel it, we can still put positive energy into the world. So that would be selfless, right? I don't really feel super positive, but I'm going to put it out there anyway because I know it's going to be helpful for other people. But the reality is, it's selfish in a good way if you do that, because then it's also going to come back around to you. Because again, whatever you're looking for, you're going to find. Whatever you sow, you will reap, and so on and so forth. So
That's
yeah,
so
it's
true.
super important just to make that decision,
Yeah.
because it can be difficult because, like you said, you're not always going to feel naturally positive. You know, are there any practices that you do that help reaffirm that positivity and that mentality that you have? Like when you're having a bad day, how do you flip that switch and get back in gear?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've got like a bit of a tool, like a toolbox that I
Yeah.
I go to, right, when I need to. I think it's also, it becomes a practice as well, like a daily practice.
Mm.
And it's just like going to the gym. The more that you work that muscle, the stronger it gets. And so for me, I think that the biggest practice for me, Brandon, in terms of making sure that I'm being intentional with how I'm setting up my day and setting it up for success is really spending the first hour of my day in gratitude, in meditation, in prayer. And really, I call it like my power hour or just like my me time, because that first hour of the day is really so important in terms of like setting myself up for success. So, for example, instead of the first thing that I do when I wake up and I open my eyes, I really do my best to not go for my phone. It's so like instinctive for us all to go like reach for the phone and like scroll through social media or check emails or what's going on. But I found that when I stopped doing that and I actually didn't go for my phone first and foremost, and instead I just got up, made my bed, like just getting up and moving your body, giving gratitude for as little as like your bed, your warm sheets, all of the things, right? Goes such a long way. And then, from there, it's going, sitting down, having my water, my coffee. I love my coffee in the morning, and then writing in my journal. Like I love to journal. I love to meditate, and when I meditate, it's just like again reaffirming gratitude is huge. And then also just setting the intention for my day. And another thing that I've been practicing for many, many years is visualization. And so, whatever it is that I'm desiring to create, or whatever it is I'm desiring to create in my life, I really get clear on what does it look like, and more importantly, what does the person behind that vision actually look like? What is she doing?
Mm.
What are her habits? What are her behaviors? How does she feel? Right? How is she showing up in the world? And so anything that I am desiring to create, first I always want to paint a vision, and then figuring out, okay, who's the person who's living that vision now, and then really
Yeah.
stepping in. And so I incorporate all of those elements into my daily like morning practice. And I find that whenever I start my mornings off that way, Brandon, that it really puts me into a mindset of joy, of excitement, of abundance, of love, and really, so again, wherever your attention goes, that's where energy flows, right? So whatever it is that you're focusing on, you're going to bring that energy to you, right? And like there are days too when if I'm not doing that, and I can notice a huge difference. If I wake up and
Mm.
say I'm running late, right? Like I get out of bed and I'm rushed, I skip my morning ritual and I skip all the things. I notice a huge difference. Like I'm not in the zone. I'm not in flow. Instead I'm like I'm caught up and everything's just kind of operating on like autopilot, right? But I
Mm.
would say the biggest thing is really setting yourself up at the very start of your day. Mornings are huge. And I'm really curious to like actually throw that question back on you is what
Yeah.
do you do? Like how do you what are some of the things that you use and implement to really show up with that positivity that you do and to be able to really create and do the things that you do every day?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the gratitude thing first and foremost, right? Because I think that's huge for me as well. And I think the key that you mentioned before I answer that question, the key that you mentioned there is you didn't say anything that was out of reach for the average person, right? You
Mm,
said, "Hey, I'm grateful that I woke up." You said, "Hey, I just want to go enjoy my coffee in the morning," right? It's not like we're waking up and saying, "Oh, thank you, universe, for my 20,000 square foot mansion. This is great." It's like, no, you can be grateful for little things, the way that the sun feels when it hits your face in the
mhm.
morning. Like you said, the ability to just get up, that your body works properly, that you can get up and stretch out, and like just the little things. I think that's really important because so many of us think, well, I will be grateful when. It's like,
Yeah.
when what?
Yeah.
It's like you don't have enough. I mean, imagine if your best friend, right? If you kept giving your best friend gifts over and over and over again, and they never said thank you, right? And then in their mind, it's just, oh well, it's not enough. It's not a big enough gift. It's not an expensive enough gift. It's not a good enough gift. Eventually, you're probably going to stop giving them gifts, right? I think life is very, very similar. If we don't have the capacity to be grateful for what we have, what in the world makes us think we would deserve more? So to answer that question, gratitude, 100%. That's always incorporated into, I'm a religious, well, not religious, spiritual individual. So
Yeah.
prayer every single morning. And so gratitude is a huge, huge part of that. Again, thank you, God, for just the opportunity, right? I don't need anything else but the opportunity to do something with the potential and the gifts that you gave me, right? So I think that gratitude is super important. Of course, for me, working out is huge. That's a staple in my routine. Every day means every day, not when it feels like it, not when I feel good, not when I want to do it. Every day means every single day, right? Weekends, holidays included. Doesn't mean that it's a crazy 2 hour, insane lifting session every single day, but it does mean that I got to do something active every single day. Um, I think that does a couple of things for me. Number one, I think it proves who I am to myself. I've learned over the years that my identity is not a given. My credibility is not a given. My self respect is not a given. It's
Mhm.
not like I can look back and say, oh, 5 years ago, you were an elite athlete and you were super disciplined and super hardworking and you had great character and you were super committed and feel good about it today. Now, I can reminisce and reflect on those memories and have happy, positive memories about it, but that has really no bearing on who I am today unless I continue to be committed, continue to be disciplined, continue to be, passionate about the things I'm doing. So that's a big practice for me that just shows, hey, here's a thing that I can do whether I feel like it or not on a daily basis. I don't know how many years it's been since I've gone a day without doing any sort of workout. Um, that's big to me to just reaffirm my own identity, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And there was something else that you said. We talked about gratitude. We talked about the morning routines. What was the other thing that you hit on? There was one other thing.
Visualization. Is that it?
Visualization. I
Mhm.
think that is exactly what it was. Um, the good book says people without a vision perish. It says write the vision and make it plain. And the big thing for me that has always helped with that is attach an emotion to the vision. And this
Yes.
is like classic Think and Grow Rich, right? Attach an emotion. I've literally been able to see things, just close my eyes, put some music on. I can see stuff that will literally make me emotional.
Yeah.
And those are the things that come true,
Yes.
right? If you just sit there and imagine, like, oh, yep, here's my mansion, here's my Lamborghini, here's this, but you don't feel anything,
Hmm.
it's really, really difficult. If you can get yourself in an emotional state, emotionally heightened, high vibration energy, where you literally feel like, I don't know how to articulate this, you really feel like you're there. Like you really feel like it's already happened and it's just a matter of time. Like now we're just waiting for the world to catch up. I've already experienced it. I know that this is happening.
Yes.
That part right there, that works in real life.
It's that is so spot on. And like, thank you for like highlighting that, because I feel like that's key. You can sit there and you can visualize, but it's partnering it with that intense emotion, right? If you can feel into exactly what you were just saying, it just intensifies it. And then, like you said, it's literally just a matter of time of your exterior reality catching up to it. That's it, right? And so, like, if you can do that every day, and here's one thing that I do, Brandon, that that could be helpful to others as well. Something that I do that I find helps with bringing out the emotion and bringing out, because sometimes there's like, I do have some days where I'm just like, I'm not feeling this. Like I can't get
Mm,
myself in it. Like I can't feel it. Right. And if I can't feel it, then I can't feel it. Right. I can't force it. But something that I find that has helped me over the last couple of years is pairing my visualizations with music. And so
mm,
for me, my go-to type of music where I want to like relax, that's just kind of zen or meditative, is piano. Like I absolutely love instrumentals piano. So whatever it is for you, you could incorporate sound, whatever music genre, whatever it is. But the idea is that because music is so powerful for humans in general, and it's so powerful when it comes to actually retaining information or studying or learning something, having music play in the background. And so what happens is if you can find a piece of music that you absolutely love that kind of just like touches on all the things, and you select that, say it's just like one track, one song in particular, which is what I usually do, I will play that on repeat as I'm visualizing. And I will visualize the thing and then I'll see it, and then it brings in the emotion. And so what happens is over time, when you hear it, it just, that repetition really reinforces it in your subconscious brain, right? And so when you're doing that, it just makes it so much more powerful. Another thing that I've been actually incorporating, which I feel has been so transformational as well, and again, it kind of goes in with visualization, is scripting. And so,
mm.
what I do with what I mean by scripting is I've got a like a scripting journal, and what I'll do is whatever area of my life that I want to evolve, grow, develop. Say, for example, it's my health and wellness. Okay. And so, what I would do, I would write it at the top of the page and I would start to write what my life looks like. And I would write it in third person. And so I'm talking about not I, but as Whitley. And I'm talking about all the things that Whitley is doing, what she looks like, what she's consuming, how she feels, what her life looks like. I'm literally, it's like I'm an author and I'm creating the character and writing it third person. And I'll pair that with the music. And I'm telling you, I have been able to manifest, I've been able to create things like so fast and like big things so quick by doing that. And once you're done, you know, you take your time, you script it out until you feel complete. And then you flip the page and then you do it for the next area of your life. And you do it until you've got it completely scripted out where you feel like, okay, this feels good. And then
Mm.
the next step is to use that and go, and that's your go-to to sit into your visualizations and to start to really step in and embody that person that you're creating. And I feel like that's been so powerful for the last bit that I've been doing that technique.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, I think the powerful part about that is the third person piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think that whenever we're speaking in first person, we're talking about we're talking about me. I think it becomes really, really easy for those limiting beliefs to kick in. it becomes really, really easy for me to say, I can't see me in this position, right? I can't see me living this life. But if I'm just talking about Brandon, or if Whitley's talking about Whitley, right? It just becomes a little bit easier. It's such a minor thing that you would think, oh, the language doesn't matter that much. It's it's insignificant. But I really think that it makes a difference, because when we take ourselves outside of that first person perspective, that first person point of view for just a moment, we
Mhm.
back up, we zoom out, we realize how big the world is, we realize how much opportunity is out there, we realize how much abundance is out there, and we remove ourselves from those limiting beliefs that are internal, that are close to us, right? I think that's super, super helpful. Now, of course, you still have to do the work, right? But I think that processes like this, it helps you become more open to those opportunities, and you see them when they arise. And like you said, it puts you in that mentality of, this is who I am. This is the life that I live. This is reasonable for me. This isn't external for me. This isn't something that I can't do. This is who I am. Matter of fact, if anything, this is who I was created to be,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's super, super important. I want to back up a little bit here, and let's dive into your story a little bit, because I don't know if I know too much about it, right? And I think that it could probably provide some context for the other things that we're talking about. So give me a little bit of background. What's the elevator pitch on how Whitley grew up? What was like the childhood? What was like? Give me like 10 to 16. What was that like for you?
Yeah, yeah. So I always, I come from humble beginnings, and so my upbringing was, something where I always look at, I have been like the cycle breaker in my family. And so growing up, I saw a lot of poverty, I saw a lot of drugs, I saw a lot of crime. And my environment, even though I came from a very loving family, very nurturing, loving family, the environment in which we lived in, my mom, single mother, 4 kids, we came up on social assistance, and so there was just a lot around. And I think that not having people, and I think that's so important, is like not having those folks around you, people around you who are going after their dreams, and you see just kind of like misery and dismay, and not a whole lot of people making out of there. You start to believe that for yourself. But there's always been this like little, fire in me that has always questioned, there's got to be more, there's got to be more. But, long story short, I ended up making some poor choices as a teenager. I ended up having my daughter at the age of 17. I was in an abusive relationship with a man who was 13 years older than me, and so I was caught up in that cycle that I had grown up and seen most of my life. And I just remember really feeling like this is either going to be your life, or you can change and do something about it. And I just remember like going through the hardest times, but making the decision that no, there's got to be more, and just choosing to believe that there was more. And so I ended up getting out of that toxic relationship after 4 years. I moved back home. I went back to high school because I dropped out. Went back to high school and graduated because I wanted to own my own business. And so I put myself through college while raising my daughter. And from there, I just remember being like, okay, yeah, like you did it. And I remember being in my first marketing job after graduating college and having my first like brand new car and our own apartment. It just, and I remember one day on my way to work thinking that, girl, you came a long way, and just imagine how many other women, how many other young girls out there who could really benefit from learning from you and benefit from like coming together with other women and supporting them. And that's when the idea of creating a women's support group kind of came up. And so from there, I had no idea how to run a support group. I had no idea what I was doing. But I launched it. I launched a little support group in my local city where it was just women coming together to helping other women from all backgrounds. And from there, that's when I really dove into personal development and really evolved, even just like in my spiritual journey. And that's how I got into coaching. And I took that little support, that little support group of women to a global online network of women where I started really learning. Like I was diving into business. I had opened my own event planning business. And so I was teaching women, aspiring entrepreneurs, how to run their online businesses. And I just remember that time of my life being such a huge part of my journey and like learning and really stepping into who I was and into my passions and my own purpose. And so from there, it was just around 2020. This was like just before the pandemic like really hit. And I remember making the decision to move to Toronto, Ontario. And so I'm in Canada. So Toronto is like the biggest city here in Canada. And I made the decision to move from a small little city where I had like built up my network, you know, my family, my support, everything was going good. I had a really successful event business. And I chose to let it all go. I chose to just close everything and move to Toronto because I felt in my heart I wanted to pursue speaking. I had bigger dreams, and I knew I wasn't going to. I was only going to go so far in my city, and so I moved to Toronto. And little did I know that the pandemic was going to hit hard. Single mom, two kids, and I had to go through a lot of challenges, Brandon, when I moved there. Um, Everything shut down, and so the dream of building out the business and going out and speaking and events and things like that, it just wasn't feasible. And so at that point, I remember, you know, just being in a small basement apartment, being isolated from my family and my friends, people, because we were on shutdown. You know, COVID was crazy then. And I remember slumping into a really bad depression for a while and having the most difficult time having to like pay my bills and just really really struggling. And all I can remember is just thinking like, God, why is this happening? And you know, just I've done so much, and I did, you know, I thought this was the move for me to come here, and why is this happening? And you know, because life was pretty good before I moved to Toronto, right? And I'm like thinking, okay, like next step up. No, it was just like slammed after like challenge after hardship. And so I remember one day I was thinking, something's got to give. I've got to go out and I've got to get a 9 to 5. And I remember feeling like I had failed. I remember feeling like I was giving up on my dream, and like I had failed because I had to go out and get a 9 to 5 job so that I could support my family. And I really had to change my mindset. I had to really work on changing my mindset around that. And I think, and I say this because I know there are so many entrepreneurs out there that struggle with that. And I think it's really important to know that, you know, it's not a failure. It's literally, it's just a detour. And that's what it was for me. And so I went out, and even getting the job, that was a struggle too, but I got it. And I remember from there getting the job, securing that like stability so that I could focus on building the business was huge for me. And I just remember really surrendering during that time. I just said, God, I surrender. And some opportunities started coming my way. I started to take them, and things started to work out. And so from there, I remember just like that was like one of the hardest times of my life, was like that experience. But the biggest things that I learned from that is that I know, and again, like I'm very spiritual, so you know, I feel as though like the universe, God, has a plan and had a plan for me. However, I had to go through this plan. I had to be isolated in order to grow. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned what I was capable of. I learned that I was stronger mentally and emotionally more than I thought I was. And I had to overcome these things. But I remember all of those challenges, all those trials and tribulations that I had to go through during those times was preparing me for the blessings and the things that God had in store for me. because now
Mhm.
I'm no longer living in that little basement apartment, right? We're living in our home, you know, and I've got an incredible job that complements what I already love doing. And as a result of having that job, it's opened up so many doors for me to go and work with other organizations and continue to speak and do the coaching and trainings that I love to do. And so from there, I've just been able to continue to build and build. And I've had so many blessings. And it's just like my life, it looks so, so different. And to think that for a few moments, I wanted to give up. I just wanted to throw in the towel and just give up. But I'm so glad. And so like anybody who's ever going through, you know, those changes where it feels like the rug is just ripped from underneath your feet, don't give up, because those are the times in your life where you're being tested for a reason, because you're being prepared. And sometimes that journey can feel very lonely, and sometimes you are going to be alone, and that's okay, because there are going to be times when you're going to have to be placed in situations and places where you need to be alone, because you need to cultivate things, you need to cultivate those traits and those characteristics that are going to prepare you for the blessings and the plan that is, you know, waiting ahead for you. So yeah, it that's yeah, I guess I went really off into like the
No,
whole
that was
story,
listen,
but
that was absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. I mean, that was a keynote right there. If you're listening right now, I need you to go back and re-listen to the last 10 minutes or so, because that right there was everything and more that I would hope that listeners can get out of a podcast like this. You know, it's interesting you were talking about that you felt like Toronto was going to be the big step up for you, and it turned out to be filled with trial and tribulation. And there's this biblical concept that says the path to the promised land is led through the wilderness. So you got to go wilderness first, then you get to the promised land, right? And that's so often true in any major life journey. Like whatever you think your promised land is, right? If it's successful entrepreneurship, if it's a family, if it's marriage, if it's you know, whatever your big goal is that you have in your mind, it almost always involves going through that wilderness period of some stuff that you might not want to deal with, right?
Mhm.
But that is what prepares you, and actually, in a very real way, makes you worthy of getting to that promised land, whatever it may be. So it's such an interesting story. I love everything about it. One thing that seems like a consistent theme is these brave choices, right?
Mhm.
Because most people, when you grow up in an environment where nobody's chasing their dreams, like you said, you're not really exposed to this higher level of living. It takes a lot of bravery to step out and say, I want something different for my life. Same thing with the toxic relationship. In there for what, 4 years? It takes a lot of bravery to say, hey, I'm going to leave what, even though I know it's bad for me, it still might be comfortable. It still might be supportive in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to make a choice to go out on my own and leave this negative, toxic situation, right?
Mhm.
Moving to Toronto from your hometown. Like, there's a lot of these choices that you're making. And I always tell people you got to make the choice to take a chance to create a change. If you don't make that choice, then there's never anything that's going to happen. You're going to keep getting what you've always gotten if you keep doing what you've always done. But a lot of people have a hard time getting over that hurdle because it's scary. And that's real. Like, there's real risk, there's real danger that comes with making some of these decisions. Where did that bravery and that tenacity to make those choices over and over and over and over again, and then not turn back after it got difficult after you made those choices? Where does that come from, and how can people replicate that?
Oh man. Good question. Um, I feel like I need to lean into that for a moment, because yeah, even though I've continued to make those brave choices, doesn't mean that it's always easy. In fact, it's never easy. It's scary and it's uncomfortable, and the feeling of uncertainty is so terrifying. And I think that's the thing that holds people back the most, is because they'd rather hold on to something that's familiar, because at least they can get some sort of comfort and satisfaction out of that familiarity, versus going into something that has absolutely no certainty. It's like jumping off a cliff and not knowing if your parachute's going to open, right? It's that scary. And so when making those choices, I think that if you can think of a time in your life that you've had to make a hard choice, even if it's small, but it was still a hard choice to make. And you made the choice and you overcame the thing. And if you really think about it, you gained something out of that. You gained at least something from making that small hard choice. And so you can say to yourself, I'm capable. I'm capable of making those choices. I'm capable of making brave choices. I did it before, and this is what it did for me. And so if you can remind yourself that you're capable of making those choices, and it's kind of like, again, going back to, going to the gym and working that muscle, it's a practice. And so the more that you do it, making even those small little baby brave choices, it builds that muscle, it builds that confidence within yourself of knowing, you know what, I'm going to jump, but listen, I got me. I know I'm good, right? I'm going to jump over here, but I know I'm going to be okay. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't know. I'm going to try to figure out how it's going to pan out, but I really don't know. But I'm going to jump anyways because I know that I'm going to be okay, right? And I think that it's just been a series of me making those little small brave choices, Brandon, and building on top of it. And then when you get to those bigger ones, you're like, okay, I got enough under my belt that I feel like I got this, right? And then you just do it. And then when you do that, the next time that you have a bigger brave choice you need to make, it gets a little easier because you're like, shit, I overcame that. I did that. I think I can do this. And it kind of just helps reinforce. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be fear. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to overcome any fears. Like, I still have fears because I'm always going to new levels. And every time that you go to new levels, as you evolve as a human, there are going to be new fears. There are going to be new challenges. It's a journey. And I'm learning that the more that I just trust the journey and the more that I just like enjoy where I'm at right now in the journey, as opposed to trying to speed ahead and get to the end destination, there's so much more goodness. There's so much
Mm.
more magic in being present in the journey. I hope that
Yeah.
helps.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, I love that point that the fear doesn't ever necessarily go away. I
Mhm.
always tell people that no matter how far you progress in this crazy game of life, life never really gets easier. Now, you get braver, you get better, you get more capable of handling the adversity that life throws your way. But the situations that you find yourself up against never get easier. If anything, they get more difficult. If anything, the next 1% of progress that you're going to make will require just as much effort, intention, bravery as the last 99% of progress that you already made, right? That next step is always the most difficult. And I think that people have this limiting belief. Let me not say people, let me say I used to have this limiting belief. I used to be the person that thought, well, once I get to this level as an entrepreneur, once I get to this level as a man, once I get to this level as just a human being, things will get a little easier, right? The pressure will back off a little bit and things will, it's just not the truth because there's that next dragon to slay, right? Every single time. New levels, new devils. And it's not a bad thing. It just means that you are constantly growing and life is set up in such a way where you never really get to ease off the gas pedal,
Right.
right? Like it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter how successful you are. None of that stuff really matters at the end of the day. Life is still life. Life be life and for everybody, for absolutely everybody. And you have to build yourself up. And as long as you keep looking at external circumstances and saying, oh, if I get this, if I get here, if I do this, you're always going to set yourself up for disappointment. When you look at internal circumstances, who can I build this person into being? Talking about you, yourself. That is the secret to success because you follow you everywhere. So no matter what situation or circumstance you find yourself in, now you're prepared for it,
Yeah.
right? Because you built the kind of person who is capable of working through it. Let me ask you this. How do you let go of some of the negative stuff, right? Because for a lot of people, being in some of the situations that you've been in, right? Growing up in that environment, being in that toxic relationship, or even struggling as an entrepreneur, a lot of people will hold on to that negative stuff and that will then become their identity. They will identify with that more so than anything positive about themselves. How do you, I'm assuming it affects you at some level, but how do you release that and not hang on to it? Because some people, it's like you just walking through life dragging an anchor behind you, right? How do you cut that thing loose?
Mm. All right. I got something. I got something. You ready for it?
Oh, I'm so ready. That's why you're here.
You have to have a vision and a why so strong that it is stronger than what you currently have.
Mm,
You have to have something that is so, so strong in terms of a vision of where you're going that's going to help you to let go of those things. Because most of us, like I said before, would rather hold on to something that's familiar and uncomfortable because at least through that familiarity we get a little bit of comfort of just knowing, right? Of that certainty. We know what to expect. But if you have something, if you have a why, if you have a vision that is so, so strong, you're going to want to get out of bed. You're going to want to implement the morning practice. You're going to want to focus on the positive thinking once those negative thoughts start creeping in. You're going to want to show up and put in the work. You're going to want to go to the gym. You're going to want to learn and educate yourself on whatever subject matter you want to, because it's going to help further yourself through your journey. It's having that vision, because I think that without a vision, honestly, Brandon, I wouldn't be where I am today. And of course, I know like there's so many other elements who have contributed it, and other people that supported me and have contributed to where I am today. But ultimately, it all starts with you, right? And so when you have a vision, you have a destination. And that destination is your driving motivation, that driving force, that flame within you that keeps you going forward, that keeps you taking steps ahead, that makes you feel like I want this. Like there's something better than what I'm currently experiencing. And so
yeah.
get yourself a vision and put a strong why into that vision.
Mm. What would you say to somebody who doesn't have a vision? Like, and this was me for a long time, right? Especially after I graduated college, suffered from PTSD, post traumatic sports disorder. And that's the identity crisis that every athlete has, right? After they retire from their sport. And, people would ask me that question. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to speak? Do you want to coach? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I was like, I don't know. And I had a vision for, certain benchmarks. Like, okay, financially, I want to be at this place.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I want to travel. I know that I want to do these things. But it wasn't clear. It wasn't like I heard a lot of other people say, oh, I've got a perfect picture painted of exactly where I'm trying to go in my life. For a long time, I didn't have that. So what would you say to that person who's like, honestly, I don't know what I want?
It's, you know what? I love that you're bringing this up, because I'm going to challenge that, because I feel like
Mm,
everybody has something in them, even if they can't even articulate what exactly that thing might be, but they got something in them that gives them that little like, whoo, like maybe it's like for you speaking, right?
I
It's
like
like
that.
maybe that speak, like it's like, oh, you see somebody on stage and they're just like they're working the stage and they're like, they're saying the things and it resonates, and it's like, oh, like that'd be so cool if I could do. I wonder if I could do that. It's like we all have those little things that give us that kind of like that little ping, and then that's what I call it, like little
Mhm.
pings, right? And we all have them. And so even though it may not look like a clear vision, like yet, maybe you don't have that yet, but you got something that definitely is in you that you've questioned, that you've maybe been a little bit drawn to, or maybe like just question, right? And
Mhm.
so, what I would encourage you to do is to dig in deep, like dig down, dig deep, and ask yourself some deeper, meaningful questions around, what would I love to do? Like if I could just take
Mhm.
off all limitations off the table and say, if a magic genie just came to you and was like, I'm going to grant you whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, you don't got to worry about nothing, nothing, nothing at all. Okay, everything's on the table. And if you can answer that question, it kind of like takes away all of the limiting beliefs. It takes away all the limitations and stuff that we put on
Mm.
ourselves, because oftentimes when we're asking ourselves like those deeper questions, then all of the limitations want to come in, and you want to like you overcomplicate it, right? And so if you took everything off the table, and if you could wake up tomorrow doing anything it is that you want to be doing, that you would love to do, what would it be? What would it be?
Mm.
Everything's taken care of, money, financial, everything. What would it be? And so start there. And that's what I would say,
Yeah.
start there. Because everybody has a little bit of an inkling, right? Of what it is that they feel called to doing.
I love that. I love that so much. So Whitley calls it a ping, right? Or the ooh. I like that part. Ooh. Ooh, I like that. I heard Jay Shetty talk about that one time, and he was saying that a passion is a full grown adult, an interest is an infant, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Meaning you might not know necessarily what that pinpoint passion is from day one of a new career, of starting entrepreneurship, of, becoming a parent, like whatever. You might not know specifically what that passion is right off the bat, but you know what you're interested in. It's that moment that you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know if it piques your interest a little bit. One of the other individuals who works with ET, has been with him for the last 20 years. His name is CJ. He calls that entrepreneur talk, is when you look at somebody else and you go, I think I could do that better. That's entrepreneur talk right there, right?
Yeah.
If you get that feeling of like, you know what, I could do that, and I think I could do it better. That was how I got into speaking, by the way. I won't say the name. I went to a very like A-list speakers, A-list podcasters conference, and I was sitting there in the audience. I was probably 21 years old. Had just had wrist surgery. My gymnastics career was just ending right then. Still in college, and I watched this guy on stage, and I was like, you're not. But what's crazy was I knew how much money he made, right? So I was like, you're super successful. I think I can do better than that. I said, okay, maybe this is a lane for me, right?
Mm,
And then it's like you take one step into that, and then you start figuring out, oh, I can really make an impact on people with this. Okay. Indication number two. So to your point,
yeah.
I think it's finding those moments, those pings, and then taking the small steps towards it. And then the world will give you feedback. Either you take a step towards it and you're like, oh, yo, I did not know what I was signing up for. This is terrible.
Right.
Right. And then, okay, cool. We refocus. Or, you have that experience where you're like, oh, wow, this is super fulfilling. Wow, this comes naturally to me. Wow, this is exactly what I was looking for. And then that's your indication, green light, right? As McConaughey would say, take that next step, take that next step, take that next step.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And it's so true because you never know where it's going to lead. And it's kind of when I go back to the thought, the little of, maybe I should start a women's support group, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the steps that went through that journey of me going through all of that into like where I am today, right? And it's like that is how life is a journey. And so follow those little whispers, those little pinks, because you never know where it's going to lead you toward. I had a client who she took many years ago, she took a cake decorating class, and she
Mm.
had an interest in wanting to take the class. It was just a random class that she took, and little did she know that random one time cake decorating class was going to lead to her creating cakes out of her home and selling cakes, and then which led to
Mm.
her opening up a full out cake shop business. And she was like the cake lady in her city, and she made the most amazing cakes, and the decorate amazing. And like that journey of like taking just that class because she was like, I kind of feel like I want to take it, it's interesting, led to being a very successful cake shop. And then she just kept evolving, growing from there, and where she is today is totally different. But it's just, you never know what doors are going to open up for you if you just listen to those little things. And as you go through that journey, then you start to develop the vision. Kind of going back to your question earlier, Brandon, like what if you don't have the vision? It's like you got to start with something, right? And when you
Mm.
act on it, you take those steps as you're saying, then the vision becomes a little more clear for you to be able to work toward.
Love that. I love that. What's next for Whitley? What's next for you?
Ooh, what's next? World domination. I'm just kidding.
No, you're not.
What's next for me? So 2024, I'm continuing to build out my speaking business, which has been really exciting and so fulfilling. The YouTube channel, that's up and going as well, where I'm just taking everything that I'm learning and sharing it through weekly videos, which has been super fun. And finally, just building and working on what I love doing best. And and so that's the focus for 2024. And I've got lots of other plans, but it's like it's part of the journey. And that's one thing that I'll also just say is, don't rush to get to the end. Don't rush to get to the end. Just enjoy the journey and the process, because no success happens overnight. And we talked about this throughout the whole episode about, preparing yourself as an individual who's able to hold and sustain the success of whatever it is that you're drawing towards you. So enjoy the journey and just, yeah, in the process.
Yeah, yeah. I was where was I think we were in Huntsville, actually, Alabama, speaking somewhere, me and ET, and somebody was asking that question. How do you stay focused on the journey and not the outcome? And the response, for whatever reason, that came to me in that moment is, what's the alternative?
Mm-hmm.
Because the outcome's not guaranteed. I mean, you can do everything in your power to try and induce a particular outcome, but if your happiness, fulfillment, and everything else is contingent on a particular outcome, then it's like you're really rolling the dice there with your life, because if it doesn't go your way, or even if it does go your way, then it can be taken away from you. When your fulfillment is intrinsic because it's a part of the journey and it's about who you become along that journey, nobody can ever take that away from you. You can lose all the money, you can lose all the public success, whatever it is that you're after, lose the car, whatever, and you'll still be able to stand on who you are.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so much more powerful, and it keeps you going, right? One of my friends, Inky Johnson, whenever somebody says, well, I'm working towards this outcome, his favorite response to that is, well, who promised you that you were even going to see tomorrow to get that outcome? Like, who told you that was a guarantee? Because they sold you a lie, you know? And it's just so true. It's just so true. And I think that people often gloss over advice like that because it's cliche, right? When in reality, the reason that it's cliche is because it's been repeated over and over and over again throughout generations, because it is fundamentally true. And so if you can just keep your eyes on enjoying every single day, being where your feet are, being present, I think that you will find that the outcome is even that much sweeter when you do get it.
Oh yes. Amen. Yeah, so well said. So well said.
Whitley, where can people find you? Because, by the way, you are a speaker, right? So you are available for events. You're a coach. If this podcast was not enough to convince you that she's one of the best out there, then I don't know what is. So where can people find you?
So you can visit my site at whitleyjane.com, or you can find me on YouTube, again, Whitley Jane. And I'm also on, Instagram, TikTok, all the socials.
Love it. Love it. Well, Whitley, thank you so, so much for joining us for this episode. And I wish you nothing but the best in 2024 and beyond. I have no doubt in my mind that everything that you're trying to accomplish in 2024 will become a reality. And thank you just for the value and for the wisdom that you provided on this episode. By the way, to everybody listening, please go follow her on all the social media platforms. If you're looking for a speaker at an event, you got somebody right here. And as always, take action on what we talked about. This is not one of those shows. I always say this at the end of every single episode. This is not a show where I want people to listen to it and give it a review and talk about how, deep the conversation was. That's not important to me. What's important to me is that you take a principle, you take something from this conversation, you execute on it, you implement it into your life, and you get real results, because I think that's why we are all here, is to see what all we're capable of becoming. And I know one thing for sure: if you take what Whitley's talked about on this podcast and you execute on it, you're going to become a lot more than you would have been otherwise. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Whitley, thank you again, and we'll see y'all on the next episode.